They say love can make people do crazy things, but what happens when love turns obsessive, controlling, and deadly? I would like to state that listener discretion is advised. Sensitive topics are covered. Today on Strawberry Ink., we dive into a tragic story that crossed continents, from South America to North America. A story of love, violence, and justice. Valentina Trespalacios was a rising star in Colombia's electronic music scene. She was young, talented, and had built a career as a DJ, performing at major clubs and music festivals. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was 23 years old. Then, online, she met John Nelson Poulos, a wealthy American man who was born in Houston, Texas, and had recently divorced his wife, Ashley, in Franklin, Wisconsin. He lived there with that wife and 3 kids, but after the divorce, he would start ignoring his family. He would relocate to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to live by himself. However, he would flirt with a woman in Milwaukee named Deborah. She is identified publicly as Deborah Poulos, at least. She set her name up like that since she loved him. Back in the US, John Poulos, who was 35 years old, had a career in finance, working for investment firms. To outsiders, he seemed successful, stable, maybe even a little dull. But behind the scenes, John Poulos was something else entirely. He was obsessive, jealous, and dangerously controlling. Poulos and Valentina started dating in 2021. At first, things seemed great. This was an online relationship mostly. However, at one point, both met up in person in Cancun, Mexico for vacation, and then again in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He bragged about being rich, generous, and showered her with gifts. But soon, red flags appeared. According to Valentina's loved ones, Poulos became possessive and paranoid. He accused her of cheating on him, demanded access to her social media, and even hired a private investigator to track her movements. He wanted her completely under his control, but Valentina, she was independent. She wanted to focus on her music, her career, and that was something John Poulos could not handle. On January 20th, 2023, Poulos flew to Bogotá, Colombia, where Valentina lived. He and Valentina checked into an Airbnb apartment together, where they would be living for a while. Surveillance footage from the building showed them arriving, looking happy and relaxed. But 48 hours later, she was dead. That Sunday, Poulos caught a rental car that he checked out and put a blue suitcase inside it. This suitcase had come out of the Airbnb. The suitcase was later found dumped in a garbage dumpster by a homeless man. And this homeless man had spotted the suitcase, had liked it since it was in very good condition. However, this homeless man then noticed that it seemed heavy, so he opened it, and in there were human body parts. These body parts were dismembered, they had been cut into pieces. Therefore, the suitcase was turned over to the police. The autopsy report of the Bogota Forensic Science Office was chilling. This person had been strangled to death with a rope. There were signs of bruises on the body, signs of violent struggle. The victim had defended themselves from their predator. Therefore, the cause of death was ruled murder by strangulation, and the dismemberment was confirmed. Through DNA testing, the body parts were identified as those of Valentina Trespalacios. Investigators then started looking into this crime and noticed that the only person with Valentina the last time she was seen alive was her boyfriend, John Nelson Poulos. This was determined through surveillance footage and social media records. The surveillance footage from the apartment also showed Poulos walking out with this blue suitcase and putting it in the rental car. Therefore, he was tied to the investigation as the suspect of Valentina's murder. Her own boyfriend had killed her, and now he was trying to get away with it. Poulos had a plan. He would flee the country. He rushed to the El Dorado International Airport in Bogotá, bought a one-way ticket to Panama, and was ready to disappear. In Panama, he started living there in another Airbnb property. There, he began a relationship with a sex worker, a prostitute, Madyson Conley, who was from Columbus, Ohio, but relocated to Panama to pursue prostitution as in Ohio, prostitution is illegal, but in Panama, it's not illegal, it's allowed. Madyson is known as somebody who does not work hard, somebody who takes advantage of others, constantly asks for money, and never pays it back despite claiming to. She is somebody who nobody wants to have a relationship with, and who knows, maybe she spreads STDs. Madyson Conley, known as Maddie, is currently 21 years old. And back then, she was a 19-year-old or 18-year-old, about those ages, wanting to have sex with older men who killed. However, Maddie was so demanding, and when testing positive for an STD, Poulos dumped her. Poulos also is believed to have stated that he no longer wanted to house a slut having sex with so many people because he was done spending on such women. However, despite having fled Colombia, the national police there were already on his trail. After dumping Maddie, he was leaving Panama. He was headed to Istanbul, Turkey, and had already bought a plane ticket there. However, before he could leave, he was captured in Panama at the Tucumán airport in Panama City, the outskirts. When questioned, he tried to spin a story claiming that Valentina was involved in a drug cartel, that she had been killed by criminals. But the evidence was stacked against him. This capture was coordinated between the Colombian government and the Panama government. Authorities found fingerprints on the rope he used to strangle Valentina. Surveillance footage placed him at the crime scene. The appearance of a man tossing the suitcase inside the dumpster matched the description of John Nelson Poulos. The blue suitcase, it was registered in his name. There was really no escaping this. He was as well seen exiting Valentina's apartment very calmly. So, who else would have killed her? And is John Poulos not a cold-blooded killer? The suitcase was open because it smelled like death. Valentina's body had been rotten. The airport security kept him detained in one of their holding cells. With the extradition treaty between Panama and Colombia to transport criminals without having to open any court case, Poulos was immediately flown on an Interpol plane back to the Bogotá airport El Dorado without seeing a Panamanian judge. At this airport where he landed, he was picked up by the Fiscalía Investigative Agency. At the agency's Fiscalía bunker building, he denied any involvement with the crime. Poulos quickly hired a private defense attorney to help him out. Andres Rodriguez Fonseca. The following day, loved ones of Valentina gathered at the Camillas de la Fe funeral home in Bogotá. That was 420 in 2023, April 20th. That same day, Poulos appeared for his first court appearance, known as Audiencia, at the Palo Quemao Judicial Complex, virtually from the bunker via WebEx. In this hearing, prosecutor Santiago Vasquez Betancourt announced charges, aggravated murder, and two evidence tampering offenses. Guarantees judge Oscar Hernando Garcia ordered that he remain in custody to await trial and sent Poulos to the La Picota prison in Bogota. He pleaded not guilty to the charges. In March 2024, John Poulos was put on trial. It was brought up that both him and Valentina did drugs together in that Airbnb. Then in June of that year, on the fourth day of the month, Judge Guillermo Adames Suarez found him guilty on all charges. His sentence imposed the following day, 42 years in prison. The judge only sentenced him for the murder conviction and vacated the rest. While Valentina is now buried at the El Paraíso Park Cemetery in the town of Cota, a haunted area that some call Siberia, John Poulos remains incarcerated at Bogota's La Picota prison, awaiting a decision on his appeal. But justice in cases like these is never enough. A young woman's life was stolen because of one man's obsession and entitlement. Valentina should be alive today. She should be making music, performing in clubs, living her dreams, but instead she became another victim of male violence, of control disguised as love. As we close today's case, let's remember her, not just as a victim, but as a talented, ambitious, and loved woman who deserves so much more. This has been Strawberry Ink. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Have a good rest of your day, and may Valentina rest in peace.